So today we are here with Alicia from Frank Chats with Alicia, and we're super excited to have you here today. So thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Awesome. Chris, you want me to ask her what she...
Yeah, let's jump. So that's what we'll do. We'll jump in. So normally one of the things that we start with is, let's say you're at a expo networking event. What's the elevator pitch, the 30 seconds? How do you explain what it is that you do in this sector?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So I'm Alicia. I am an educator and counsellor specialising in relationships and sexuality support for people with disability. I own a small private practice called Frank Chats with Alicia, comprising
love the name.
of thank
Love
you.
the name, obsessed with it.
But just comprising of me for the time being, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens in the future. But I guess why I'm really passionate about this space is, I'm really wanting to support the relationships, reproductive and sexuality related rights of people with disability.
Can I get an amen?
Because, we know that there are so many barriers for people with disability having access or having, I guess, these rights upheld.
Yes.
There are a lot of barriers, and that's what's really driven me in my work in this space over the past, I think, 7 years.
And what do you think the most common barrier is in our disability community?
Yeah, I think it's people around, like the support network around people with disability, the gatekeepers that may not share information, may deem it as not appropriate or not necessary to talk about relationships and sex.
Yes.
That tends to be a big one.
Yeah, and who are those gatekeepers?
Yeah, it'll be
Typically.
like the support coordinators, the support workers, and any professional person around that person. It can even be parents and carers as well.
Yeah, what about those informal supports? How big of a part do they play in that
Are you
conversation?
comfortable sitting on the lounge there?
I'm really comfortable.
Here I am, cross-legged,
I'm getting
uptight.
myself
You just
comfy.
got your shoes on the lounge.
It's not my lounge, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
exactly.
Mum thingy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Get your shoes off my lounge, boy.
Those informal supports. How important of a part do they play versus like the paid supports, like you're saying?
Yeah, I think everyone has a part to play. Everyone can have these discussions. I don't think it should be seen as someone other than having these conversations. We can all have these conversations around, you see people walking down the street, you can have that conversation. Oh, what, those two people holding hands, what do you think, what type of relationship do you think they have with each other? Like things like that you can definitely have as an informal support, as a support worker, as anyone really.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So a little bit more about your background. So I met Alicia far out. It would have been 10, 12 years ago. Support workers back in the day. So we both actually started in the industry at the same time. So do you want to tell us sort of a little bit about your career from support worker to where you are now and how it's all led to here? Because you've done some really cool shit.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So I did start out as a support worker and then moved on to adult recreation. And I guess this is where it really started my journey, was because I was supporting people to go on holidays. I was spending a lot of time with people being on holiday. They would open up about wanting to know about relationships, about sex, and we'd have those informal conversations when you're away from home and you have a bit of fun when you're on holidays. And then from there, I moved into sexuality and relationship coordinator. So I was coordinating a program around, talking about relationships and sexuality through one-on-one conversations and through group workshops around the topics. And that was really fun. I got to do some fun things there, like hosted an event called Feel the Vibe, which was an expo. I think it still is.
Feel the Vibe.
Yeah. But it was all about sexual fulfillment. So we had lots of different services that came. We had sex workers that had worked with people with disability, a great organisation called Touching Base. We had sex toys and OTs that were recommending certain sex toys based on person situation and requirements.
Can I just ask that on sex toys? Is there someone doing specialised sex toys for the disability community? Like, obviously, someone with autism might have additional sensory needs. So, is there any special sex toys?
There are sex toys that have been created by people with disability or with people with disability in mind.
Yeah.
But if we think about like the sex toy industry has, it's quite big and they've got lots of money to play with. So I think the sex toy companies are being a lot more inclusive.
My head is doing absolute miles right now thinking about all the sex
No,
toys.
so I've seen
Yeah,
I've
it
seen a fair
definitely
few
is.
that are like guys with dexterity problems and stuff like that. Alicia could certainly talk a lot more about it, but I have seen, especially guys with like CP and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Special stuff designed for that. More so guys with like physical disabilities than autism and stuff. But just adapt. Same thing as like when you get a power drive chair and you go, okay, well we need a bigger knob.
Fun.
No fun, but
Excuse the pun.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about like a different attachment. So we look at
Okay.
like different attachments. There's like things that you can suction cap onto the wall and things. So you can have just toys that will suction cap onto or clamps that clamp onto your bed, and you can use them independently. But yeah, there are like I don't know if you've heard of I think they're called bumpin.
Bumpin.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a sex toy that was developed by a group of people, including people with disability, that provided their input and advice on creating this sex toy. But I mean, there's lots of sex toys out there. Sex toy industry is very progressive and very inclusive as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, something that's not typically, something that's a taboo topic in the NDIS sector, that the actual sex toy industry is being far more inclusive than other
sector.
than the sector. Exactly right. Yeah, cool. And so, sorry, continue with your story. I digressed.
No,
Apologies. Sex toys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
back, feel the vibe.
Sorry,
Yeah.
feel the vibe. That's where we were.
I had to remember where I was up to. So then I was doing events like that, and then from that I created my own private practice, looking at relationships and sexuality education and support in that space.
So what does that look like, your role now within your business? So I think obviously there's two parts, you running the actual business and then working in the business, delivering a lot of that support as well. So first part of it is what is that, your day-to-day working in the business, the supports that you deliver and the outcomes that you achieve?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm just doing, I'm not just doing, I have to learn to stop saying that, but I am doing one-on-one education and counselling around the topics of relationships and sexuality.
Yep.
And that's quite broad. So one day I could be talking about like dating information and exploring relationships. And the next day I could be talking about contraceptive options or sexual health information or exploring self and sexuality as well. So like it is quite broad.
Yeah,
my
nice.
day-to-day, my day-to-day life.
If you could de-identify one person that you've, worked with that's got a really cool outcome, like a cool story where you've worked with them for some time and you've, achieved their goal or whatever, could you share a story?
So I've worked with a young man who is early 20s.
I was going to
think.
say, how young is young?
Early 20s, and when he came to the service, he had a lot of run-ins with police. He was travelling on the trains and staring intently at people that he found attractive and body parts that he found attractive. When he had a few run-ins and had a few warnings from that, and from that I worked with him. I enjoy working with him. I don't work with him anymore, but we were providing education around maybe how to do things a little bit subtly. So we were practicing and role modelling, sitting on the train and, looking slightly over and things like giving guidelines around appropriate, interactions. That was really fun. I'm getting to role play those situations.
Yeah, cool.
And I mean, he now travels independently on the train and he's fine.
Hasn't had any more encounters with
Hasn't
the police.
been arrested.
Hasn't been
Always a
arrested.
positive.
I mean,
that is a win.
Unfortunately, that's when I start to work with people, when there's been an issue. I really like to work with people regardless, but I think we miss that stage before when we can provide so much education before it gets to like a crisis and something's happened. I guess a lot of people tend to miss that opportunity to maybe in school settings they hadn't had sex ed, or it wasn't a sex ed program wasn't appropriate for them. It wasn't accessible
do they
to
that
them.
in the mainstream school? Like
Yeah.
in mainstream schooling, do they talk about sex education relationships? Like, is that normal practice in the education? I'm not.
It is, and I remember for me, again, Alicia can speak to it more currently, but I remember at school, like we sort of started to touch on it in like year 3 for me.
All I remember is Healthy Harold. Does that still?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was when I was. But and I went to a Catholic school as well, so it's interesting. We started to, and then I think it was like the Catholic high school was when they really sort of dove into it. But so I can't speak for public schools, but yeah, it was certainly approached then. But then it also becomes a question of like, whose decision is it? Is it the schooling systems, or is it parents to decide, or you know, I guess that's the controversial topic more so than when. It's sort of like, whose decision is it as to when that child learns, right?
Yeah, but as human beings, we're innately want to have connection with people, right? Physically, emotionally, like that's just how we interact as humans, you know. So whether you've got a disability or not, that shouldn't be any different,
change.
right?
No,
That doesn't
yeah, no.
change. It's not any different. So whilst there might be some additional barriers, and I'm not saying there isn't with people who don't have a disability, because, you know, go on Tinder and find that out, you know. There's some definitely
Can't relate.
some inappropriateness going on that app, right? You know, but when you're working with when someone has a disability, there might be some additional challenges. So like you said, why aren't we working with people, you know, to just educate them like we would anybody else, to have a normal relationship, to explore their sexuality or whatever it is, you know, so that they can, you know, have a great life and live in society just like everybody else, you know, rather than being reactive. It takes for them to get, you know, arrested, you know, or, you know, whatever other things happen for you to become involved, you know. Yeah. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. Amen. Yeah, I think that's
Well,
right.
that was my experience as well. Even as a support worker, I remember hanging out with the boys, and you know, it just wasn't really a topic that you'd approach. And you know, different orgs that I worked at and stuff, and we'd, you know, say to the coordinator like, "Hey, we're just going to get some lunch," and then straight off to strip clubs.
What?
Yeah. I went to strip club as a support worker as well. Yeah.
And that's what
Here I am running a support providing business, and I'm like risk assessing that in my head.
No, but that was
Strip clubs are good.
they were
yeah.
always really good.
Sure, you were.
Everyone loved it. Everyone had a great time.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. But no, we would, and look, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. You'd always be respectful of the families, but a lot of the boys didn't want everyone to know exactly what they were doing. It was more their, you know, a right to privacy to say, I don't want everyone to know that I'm going to a strip club. Let's just say that we're going out on community access, going to get some lunch. And yeah, then they'd go and have lunch. They'd get their schnitzel and their chips. But yeah, they'd just see some titties at the same time.
It's true. Like, I mean, how often?
Sorry.
But it's so true. Like, how often do you talk to your parents about having sex, or like going to a strip club? Do you go ring up your mum? Hey, I'm just gonna have sex now. Like, why do we need to have like? Why do people have to have permission to do something enjoyable? Like, everyone has their right to privacy as well. I think that's really important, to have those opportunities for privacy and having fun.
I did tell my dad about the Bucks party that I just went on, and I haven't FaceTimed him, so yeah. So maybe I don't care so much about the privacy, but
Everyone's different.
This is not about you, Chris.
Yes, it is. This whole show. No, I do. I think it's so important. And the fact that like people might still think that it's a taboo subject to approach. If that's the case, I would hope that at least they have that same mentality towards their everyday life. Like, I think if someone is uncomfortable talking about sex in their everyday life, then I can see that that's okay in a work setting or in a disability setting. But I just think that you definitely can't be open to having a conversation about sex in your normal life, but then when it comes to someone with a disability, not. Like, there shouldn't be a difference there. If you're comfortable having that conversation in everyday life, then you should be in a situation with a person with a disability as well. Like there should be no difference to be had.
But and same thing, if someone comes up to you and wants to talk to you about sex, you have the responsibility to pass it on to someone. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, but you need to find someone to have that conversation because that's not okay to shut it down. And, I've worked with people that have had someone shut them down in a first instance, and it's been years since they've asked that question again.
And what was the question?
Or around, can you support me to see a sex worker? And it was shut down.
Okay.
And then, 10 years down the track, they've had the courage to ask it again, and they were, got to, I guess that was a positive outcome. They got to have that opportunity to see a sex worker, but it shouldn't have been like that. They should have been supported in that first instance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Even if they didn't feel comfortable, but hey, I might not be the right person to have this conversation with, but I'm going to connect you with someone who can.
Yeah.
It's just basic dignity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I know, but that can be uncomfortable. That can be an uncomfortable, situation for people. But maybe the people that aren't as comfortable as talking about sex as we are,
Yeah.
And also they might be scared of the possible retribution or anything. Retribution, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with
Repercussions.
Thank you. I was like, that didn't sound right when that came out. Yes. Whatever that word was, if they do have, a conversation and then they get into, trouble or anything like that. But you are right. They do absolutely need to at least,
the responsibility to pass it on.
Yeah.
Everyone has that, being able just to be like, that's a really great question. Let me find someone that can support you in this way. I'm not the person, but let me find you someone that can. I think that's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah. And so how do you make talking about sex like fun, light, appropriate, like how do you do that?
Yeah, I guess I have a bit of a laugh with people I work with as well. Like if someone comes to me and they're having they say sex and and then we all have a little bit of a laugh, and I guess that creates that environment that it's okay to find it funny. It's okay to feel awkward about it. But I'm okay to talk about it. If you want to talk about any topic around relationships and sexuality, happy to. But having that laugh, I think, really makes people feel comfortable and lets people know that it's okay to feel a bit awkward. It's okay to be a bit silly about it.
Yeah.
You don't need to take it super seriously, but it depends on the topic within there. But yeah.
What point, for people like support coordinators or providers or anyone listening that does have a participant that's starting to get interested in having these conversations or whatever, what are those ways that they would come to you? Like what are those sort of signs that you're looking for? Is it just people start to have those conversations? Is it, should there be earlier intervention, like at the same times that they're in schooling? Does obviously how long's a piece of string is this question, but what are those sort of signs that people should look for where they should go, hey, if you want to investigate this, call Alicia?
Yeah, well, and being preventative rather than reactive. Like what are those lead up signs to before it becomes before you're putting out the fire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a thing I talk about a lot is having those conversations. So, saying, is this something you want to talk to me about, or is this something you want to explore? And if they say, do you want to explore relationships, or what do the relationships look like in your life? And you're having those conversations as a support coordinator. If a person shuts it down and says, no, I'm not interested, I think it's really important that you have that conversation, plant the seed, and then follow up as well. So don't ever just leave it at that, tick my box, I've talked about relationships and sexuality, I've asked them and they've said no. We're planning that, being able to plant that seed and then follow up as well, because it might be something that they really want to talk about, but talking about sex is taboo in society. So you, I guess, need to do a little bit of work around that space to make people feel comfortable with it, and obviously develop a bit of rapport. But if a person says, I really want to learn about relationships, or I really want to learn about friendships, that's enough of an in for me to work with someone. I might get a referral and they'll say, I really want to learn about friendships, but then all these other little questions will come out, and there'll be questions around contraception and questions about exploring self and sexual identity and things will come out of just a referral for wanting to make friends.
All the potential scenarios that could lead to to sending somebody to have a chat with you. It could be like, you know, they're just starting to explore to masturbate, you know, and they might not be closing the bedroom door. You know what I mean? Like that's a perfect in right there, you know, like just, you know, obviously masturbation is normal, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but, you know, maybe doing it with the bedroom door might be a sign that, you know, they're starting to explore, you know, all those, you know, their next steps in their, you know, adulthood life or whatever, you know.
How does that look in terms of service delivery? Is it core supports? Is it capacity building? Does someone need to, so if someone, you know, wants that help as well and they're not specifically funded for that, you need to go back into the plan and get some more capacity building? What is all of that funding?
It is capacity building, improved daily living under that same bucket that other like therapists, like speeches and OTs access as well. That's where that funding can comes from as well. I also, if people aren't necessarily funded specifically for this, I also write support letters before people even get the funding. I just do like a little one-pager based on a quick conversation with someone so that they are able to advocate. This is the service. This is the reason why it's needed, to advocate for more funding. But because it is...
You're right.
I was trying to hold that in and it just
came out.
Didn't do anything.
Sorry, continue.
No. But because it's access from that therapy bucket, it's pretty easy. Just even if, you know, I see someone for a couple of sessions and then I can write a report or advocate for more funding based on what the person's situation is and what they want to achieve.
And so do you also use as an opportunity to educate either the informal supports or the paid supports in that person's life to give them education resources and tools to be able to sort of implement, you know, all the stuff that you might be doing in your therapy sessions?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I've learnt like through my time, I think when I was starting out, I was kind of young and I was like, no, it was just me and the person with disability, the person I'm working with. But over time, I've definitely learned it's really important to include the support network with consent with the person, obviously. But, you know, it's not a lot me just doing a 1 hour session once a fortnight or once a week. We need a team approach. So I might give the person some homework to do with their support worker and provide the support worker with a bit of information as well. It might be, you know, go down to the park or go to the shop and look at some people in the park and spot out the differences of what relationships you might think they're in based on the body language and things like that. It'll be little things like that.
Cool. I think that's really good.
Or what's your favourite TV show? Use a special interest. I really like Home and Away. So sit down with your support worker and watch Home and Away and then talk about the relationships. Lots of opportunity there watching Home and Away.
Really?
Yeah, talking about relationships.
It's been so long since I've watched Home and Away.
Is it still around? Neighbours is done. Neighbours is, I'm pretty sure Neighbours is done.
I think Neighbours is done, yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, you can use anything to
Love Island?
Yeah, Love Island, yeah.
X on the beach, the trash.
What's the...
These are the relationships that we're not...
Married at First Sight?
Yeah, Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I love talking about that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many opportunities, everyday life opportunities to talk about relationships, sex, you know.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously you and I are mums, so we touched on this before and lucky I didn't get teary-eyed when we were talking about it. But we talked about, you know, children being removed, getting the removal of care from their biological mother because they have an intellectual disability or something like that. So you're doing some work in that space. So do you want to tell me a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so I guess since becoming a mum or since being pregnant and becoming a mum.
We become wimps, right?
Yeah. I just, you know, seeing the injustice there and, you know, wanting to work with mums more and mums with intellectual disability, considering the high rates of child removal, which is just heartbreaking. Wanting to work with mums more around, you know, understanding relationships and parenting, like learning about parenting, all those kind of areas is, I guess, where I am interested in, and I want to work more in that space as well.
Nice.
I'm, you know, doing further training in supporting mums with intellectual disability, you know, providing parenting education programs for them.
Yeah, and I think from someone working in this space, it's such a necessary requirement in our space, to reduce, the risk of somebody having a baby or wanting to be a mother, or a parent. So I think that's, incredible work that can be done in that space. So I hope that we're connecting again in 12 months' time and, that you've done some work there and that there's, I don't know, some more programs and stuff like that, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I definitely think
shake
that's
up that
area.
space. Yeah,
an area that's definitely very interesting. And definitely like to work more with mums.
Totally
as well.
All right, my last question, I guess, for providers listening, especially ones that are doing or offering a niche program or have a very specific kind of participant they support or a very specific outcome they address. What sort of things are you doing to get your business recognised and showcase that? For example, are you doing any like masterclasses or workshops or going around to other providers and telling them what you do, jumping on this podcast? Like, what are those things that you're doing?
Plug.
What am I trying to do?
Yeah.
Yep. Talking on podcastings. I am trying to go out and chat to support coordinators and chat to them about how to bring up conversations around relationships and sexuality. What are some of the questions you can ask, how to follow up and things like that. So I'm definitely open to chatting to support coordinators and, providing a bit of support in that space and also explaining a little bit about what I do. And yeah, I guess I'm not doing a lot else, on social media and things like that, but I'm not a very good marketer.
Oh,
clearly.
Chris, she needs to come and talk to you.
Yeah.
Hey?
If only you knew someone.
But yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it is hard having kids as well and trying to work and.
Oh,
do it
girl,
all
all that people need to know is that a person like you exists. Like, and so I'm sure that, listening to this podcast or otherwise, as long as people know that you're out there and that you're providing this incredible niche support that is so needed in our sector, the business will come.
And it's not even like Alicia's only been doing this for a short period of time. Not only has she been in the sector for 10 plus years, but most of her time in the sector has been delivering this too. So she's not just an expert in this sector, one of the OGs. It's in pioneering this, you know. So,
and also there's only a few people that do this really in the space, but only a very small handful of people that do it really, really well and who can make it fun, who can make it safe, who can make it just appropriate and be totally okay with having these very normal conversations that about sex, relationships, or anything else that surrounds that, with a person with a disability, and taking the disability out of it and just having a conversation with a person that wants all of that same shit too,
I find it really fun. I think it's really fun to have those conversations. It's good fun having those conversations and seeing light bulb moments as well, which is really interesting. Like I was just actually reflecting on this the other day, that I was working with someone around barrier methods of protection. And
what methods?
Barrier methods of protection, so like using condoms and things.
Oh, barrier.
Barrier,
barrier methods, never heard of that.
Yeah, so like contraceptive options.
Boomer. You don't know about that.
At the age.
You don't know the old Barry method. Where have you been living? Sorry.
And we were like talking about condoms, and we had condoms on the table, and we were looking at them, and I was talking to the person around how to use them and everything, and this is like stuck with me for years. He looked at the condom wrapper and he was like, "Oh, it's not a pill that you take."
Oh,
and I was like, "No, it's not. It goes over the person's penis." And he was like, "Oh, right." And just those little things that have really stuck with me, that this person's in their early to mid 20s and didn't know what a condom was. Yeah, little things like that that's really stuck with me, and I think it's so important to have those conversations and provide education in that space.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so I think let's wrap up. Give us your takeaways, and how we can get in touch with Alicia.
All right, well, I can't tell you that. Alicia's
She
probably
can.
going to
She
have to
will.
tell you that. But that's going to be the best takeaway from this podcast is going to be how to contact you, my girl. Because, we need more people like you in their sector. But my 3 takeaways is that obviously sex or relationships, the topic doesn't have to be taboo. Let's make them fun and appropriate and have them anyway. I thought about a side hustle for sex toys, but that's outside of this. Let's be preventative rather than reactive, and get ahead of the game and educating people about sex and relationships, and that strip clubs are a good time. You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, for anyone listening that does want to get in contact, what's the best way to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is frankchats.alicia.com.au, or you can email me at frankchatswithalicia@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Perfect. We might add it to the...
Yeah, we'll put it in the description.
We'll do something really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's been great to catch up with you. Great to see all the cool things you're doing. And we look forward to catching up with you in the next 6 to 12 months. See all the cool things you
We're going to have a
continue to do.
recap with Alicia.
Yeah, we do.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.